Okay, well, I can continue to let people in, but meanwhile, I think we'll just sort of get this session started, if you don't mind. I'm really excited to spend this bit of time with two fabulous women, Molly and Shannon. Shannon Keith is the founder and CEO of Sudara, a social enterprise B Corp, and a nonprofit side of it, the Sudara Freedom Fund. And Molly Bull is the vice president of marketing of the very same company. Sudara is a hybrid model that Shannon has built as a proven model for scaling more good in the world. Today, we're going to have her share how separating the for-profit side of the mission and the nonprofit services side can come together to really make some impact. As a person who's worked in the private sector, but now runs a local nonprofit, I'm excited to hear about how these two parts of the world might come together and to understand a bit more of Shannon's way of thinking and what sort of inspired this. Shannon, why don't you take it away?
Hi, thanks for having me, everyone. I've been just kind of feasting off the good inspiration of the conference over the past couple of days, and I'm just really excited and honored to just be part of this conversation. So thanks so much, Sarah, for having us. I think, for those of us who are in this movement here on the call today, it's no surprise that nonprofits have a really great part to play and certified B Corps. And so Sudara is a hybrid organization. We've sort of learned over the years that both are really important, and working in conjunction together, there can be a whole lot of synergy and just exponential goodness that can come when those parts happen. So we're going to take just a minute so that you don't have to hear me blabber on, but we have a short video that really shows what Sudara is, about our mission, and then we can kind of dig right into some of your questions. So I think, Molly, thank you for queuing up the video. We're going to run that, and I think it's just about 2 minutes.
It was a bright sunny day in India when our vans pulled up to a red light area. Walking across that footbridge, I had no idea that this village would change the trajectory of my life. It didn't look like what I anticipated in a red light district. It was a village and a community. The homes of the ladies were actually their places of business. The pastor of the church and ministry that we were in with asked me if I would share a few words with the ladies. Immediately, I said yes. And immediately following that, I realized that I felt completely inadequate. I just really thought, here I am, a privileged woman from Orange County who has a loving husband, a wonderful family, so much support. And what do I have to share with these women? What could I possibly give them that would be of any help? Looking literally into the eyes of broken women before me leveled me and broke my heart. I immediately thought, if these women are ever to escape this horrific situation, they have to have a job. Looking at the beautiful Indian saris that were before me, I thought, if we could just create a product for them to sew, I could sell it, it would create jobs, and the cycle of poverty would be broken through women gaining access to the economic playing field. What started as a flash of inspiration that day really turned into the fire that has caused me to really use business as a strategy to alleviate women out of forced prostitution and give them opportunities to have a new life.
Shannon, you are clearly an example of someone doing really good things for this world, having business as a force for good. Oh, and look at your pooch there.
Tell me, she was feeling needy. So this is my little dog, Jasmine. She's going to join the conversation.
We are truly in the Zoom world now. So why did you decide to start Sudara as a nonprofit structure back in 2005, I think?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think the really easy, pragmatic answer is because there really weren't B Corps 16 years ago, particularly in the state of Oregon. That wasn't a thing. And so it was there were still good companies doing good things. You know, the Patagonias and the Ben and Jerry's still existed and all of that, but there really weren't handles of small businesses that you could use sort of as a force for good, right? So this was like 16 years ago. And I knew that I'm part of the BIPOC community. I'm part of the Latinx community. And so being a woman of color, I knew that, you know, it was beyond a charity kind of model that we needed. It's that whole idea of listening to the people and centering the needs on their voice and what matters. And they really wanted jobs and economic opportunity and to support themselves and to help their communities out of poverty. They're really not looking for dominant culture to come and sort of save or rescue. And so it was really important for me that it was really about giving women and oppressed people economic opportunities. And but at the time, again, there wasn't the B Corp movement that there is, you know, 16 years later. And so started a nonprofit. I'm again, like I said, I'm biracial, Mexican American. I'm first generation college graduate as well. So I wanted to use kind of that privilege and that opportunity. And at the same time, I'm not from a family of entrepreneurs and didn't have a lot of guidance within my family or my community on what it was to start a business or anything like that. And so the leaders that were around me at the time, I was in my late 20s, were like, oh, if you want to help people, start a nonprofit. That's what nonprofits do. They help people. And so it was just sort of a very binary way of thinking 16 years ago.
And it was built partly around the idea of slow fashion. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
What is that? I haven't heard.
It's just kind of the antithesis. Thanks for asking. Kind of the antithesis of the fast fashion movement. And so I think most people are aware of what that means, but fast fashion and fashion in general has been a very extractive, exploitative market. I mean, both from a human perspective and from an environmental perspective, because we're all humans and most of us wear clothing, right? And that industry has really just done a lot of social and environmental damage to our world, particularly when it's kept unchecked and unregulated in many parts of the developing world. And so this whole idea of fast fashion has exacerbated that, and it has made consumers think that you can get things at a very low cost without looking at the true cost, right, of what it actually takes to produce a garment in an ethical way. So we are intentionally opposed to that philosophy and have structured our clothing line, which is pajamas and loungewear, in a way that it will not only, you know, be mindful of people and planet and a virtuous supply chain, but it will also extend the life cycle of products, because we want them to be ubiquitous. We want them to be versatile. We want them to have a lot of value for our customers, so they stay in their closets and out of the landfill.
Can you explain this a little bit more, the balance between this hybrid model of nonprofit and for-profit, and what both parts of the company do?
Yeah. So the nonprofit at this point, so we started as a nonprofit, and then just through my own life circumstances and having children and different things, I probably would have tried to launch the for-profit sooner, but it wasn't until like about 2014 where my youngest child was in preschool and I was able to tackle a bigger project again. And so as a founder board member, we decided to spin the business component, which was kind of the pajamas and loungewear business, off as its own. And that was registered in the state of Oregon as a benefit corporation. And then we were certified through B Labs. And so that happened in 2014. And so now we have two distinct entities with the same singular mission, which is providing pathways to freedom and economic power to women who are at highest risk or survivors of sex trafficking in India. And the nonprofit has a really important part to play, because there are wraparound services that really vulnerable and oppressed and traumatized populations need, so that they can actually actualize the opportunity of a job. So you can imagine women coming out of the brothels, or those born into the brothels, are at, there's a lot of trauma. Sometimes there are health issues, safe housing, nutrition, all of those things a nonprofit can really come and support, particularly with the lack of safety nets that aren't as apparent in India and lots of other places in the world. So that's a really good place for the nonprofit to come and play their part. And then once the woman is able of her own choosing and agency to say, yes, I want skills training, I want job placement, I want to be able to dream again, or maybe for the very first time, that's where a business could come into play and give a sustainable living wage job so that she can either take a stepping stone. Some women in our programs have started with a normal kind of job as an employee and then become entrepreneurs themselves, which is really exciting. So it just is, but that's where the business can really provide those jobs for long-term economic freedom and stability for the women and children we serve.
So it's a journey for you, like it's as opposed to two, well, it might be financially distinct or separate parts of the organization. It sounds like it's really a journey for the women.
Yeah, because we're human beings, and I think it's a journey for all of us, right? So that's just, we're not linear. Human beings are not linear, and so these women are no different from ourselves, other than the fact that they have been oppressed and lacked opportunity. And so, yes, our journey as an organization has not been linear, and theirs isn't either. And so, I think when we continue to center our work around them, that leads us to the right conclusion. And so we started as a nonprofit, and it was like, that's not good enough. We need to do better. Okay, this hybrid model, great, this is better. Maybe in 10 years, there'll be something else that we need to, adjust and course correct so that we keep our mission, our driving force, our North Star, and we remain crystal clear on that. Because at the end of the day, Sudara is not trying to build a pajama empire. We are trying to help women and give them, opportunities for them to take themselves. We don't force anyone to do anything. We just provide opportunities so that women can have choice.
Wow, as one of the people involved with Dress for Success here in Portland, the things that you're talking about, I'm like, yes, this is exactly what we're working on every day. It's so wonderful to hear this. So you mentioned hybrid model. Can you explain that, like the actual term, a little bit more?
Yeah, I think, if you think about it like a hybrid car, right? A lot of people are familiar with that. And so as opposed to just a gas car or just a Tesla like electric, there are those hybrid cars where sometimes you get more fuel efficiency just using the gas or whatever. And other times the electric kicks in, but really it's also that the car will be more efficient, so that it will be optimized, so that it'll save you dollars, so that your gas mileage will go further and all of that sort of thing. And so that really is how we view it, that it's not one or the other. It really is a 1 + 1 makes 3 with that synergy. Because like I said, the nonprofit can do kind of what nonprofits do, particularly in a crisis situation like COVID. We were really able, because we have boots on the ground and very strong relationships with our partners in India. And when the Delta variant was surging there in the spring and completely decimating their country, we were able to activate through donations, right? Through our nonprofit partners saying, okay, nobody's going to work. The supply chain's broken. Nobody's making stuff. And Sudara community and family, we need you to step up in a way that supports, the women and children that have always been at high risk, that are even higher risk. And within, like a few days, we were able to raise like $50,000, $60,000, deploy it on the ground so that women could still pay their rent and feed their kids, even though they weren't working. We made it possible. That's a beautiful picture of how a nonprofit in crisis can help meet an immediate need without a lot of, red tape, bureaucracy, all that kind of stuff. And then on the flip side, on the business side, we were able to say, okay, that was amazing. And the job isn't over. The Delta variant is still thrashing, the whole world. And at the time, specifically India, and these women need a job to come back to. So from a business side, let's make sure we keep buying products. Let's pre-order products so that we have POs ready when the doors reopen and they're there. Let's make sure that we can continue to support the work, and we can do, not just trauma and crisis care, but really long-term restorative, growth for these women, and that we can invest in even more women. Because the harsh reality is that because of COVID, it's made vulnerable populations that much more vulnerable. There's kind of a secondary effect of orphan crisis in India by losing parents to COVID, and particularly the women we serve, they're mostly single moms because their children are a result of their work as sex workers. And so we've had, many of those women have died and then left their kids orphaned. So again, just a lot of unintended, unplanned consequences that make a hybrid model really beautiful because they can work together hand in hand. When we're trying to solve the hardest problems, I think that, our generation and for sure people alive today have ever faced.
Wow, you have clearly been doing some phenomenal work. It's really cool to talk to you. For people who are participating today, I encourage you to put questions in the chat and we'll try to get to them as we go through. But Shannon, I'm guessing there are some people who are here today who run the for-profit B Corp side of what we're talking about, and maybe a few that are doing the nonprofit side like I am right now. Can you talk a little bit about what it takes to move into or to transition into a place where you can do both?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a silver bullet or lots of answers. So I'll just, speak from my experience for sure. But I think the first and most important thing is it takes a lot of resolve and grit just to do the right thing. I was really inspired by the first panel today, the anti-racist panel. I thought Alexis and I think Mari did such an amazing job because they were really speaking to the fact, that sometimes you just have to do the right thing, even if it doesn't make a great business decision or whatever. But when we're talking about equity and justice and all of those things, it's not always going to make sense financially. It's not always going to pencil out, right? So we can't be stupid and close our doors because we're making bad decisions. But at the same time, you have to have that resolve and kind of political will to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And long term, it is going in the right direction as it relates to justice and equity and all the things that we're trying to do as B Corps. So I think that's first. You just have to have conviction, commitment, and resolve. And then you have to have the right sort of nonprofit partnership. And we at SUDAR are all about collaboration. Now, the great part is because we started as a nonprofit and a 501c3 and that's still going, we spun the other out, it was already there. But let's say you are just a certified B Corp or an aspiring one and you're like, well, we don't have a nonprofit and I don't want to reinvent the wheel and I don't want to start a 501c3. I don't think you have to. That's not the point, that a singular entity has to do both things. But I think you partner up with the right nonprofit who's right in your wheelhouse, who's right in a mission alignment, and not this kind of paltry little, oh yeah, we give them, a few $1,000s a year and we call it a strategic partnership. That's not a strategic partnership. That's just writing a check and you may or may not get a tax write-off. You may or may not care about the issue. You probably do, but just writing a check really isn't a strategic partnership. That's helpful and the nonprofit needs that. But I would say digging deeper, really doing your homework, finding a collaborative strategic partner and going deeper with them and seeing how your missions align. There shouldn't need to be mission drift for either of you. This should really be that synergistic partnership that we were talking about earlier. And so I would say that's the other thing. You don't have to start a nonprofit, or if you're a nonprofit, you certainly don't have to start a business, but you need to find those right ones because, the world and the problems we have are just too complex for us to go at this alone. We really need collaboration, and we need more collaboration and bigger collaboration and greater collaboration. And, that's the way, in my humble opinion, that we're going to move the needle on the issues that we all care about.
What's the win for the nonprofit? I can see I just got a check for $10,000 or $50,000 or $100,000 for the nonprofit. But what does a nonprofit need that this kind of collaboration would do? What limits are there in a nonprofit that this would help, this kind of hybrid model?
Really the nonprofit in our experience is the one that gets most the upside actually, because for us as a business, and we have kind of an add-on donation to purchase. And so our nonprofit is actually getting tons of new donors albeit smaller ones, but sometimes larger ones, because people, it's kind of like adding your tip when you go get a cup of coffee or whatever. A lot of people, because they care about the issue, are consumers, are committed, they're conscious consumers, they understand, their purchasing power. And if they don't, we help educate them on what that means. And so on our checkout cart and our product detail pages, they can add a donation in any amount. They can a $10 donation, $100, become a monthly donor, whatever. And so our nonprofit gets, hundreds of new donors every month, which is an amazing feat. As you know, Sarah, as a nonprofit, like acquiring like customer acquisition costs of new donors is really steep for nonprofits. And in fact, that's where a lot of budgets get spent. A lot of times it's like trying to keep your overhead, but you have to spend on these huge galas or big fundraising campaigns or hire consultants or whatever. And so sometimes, 20% of a nonprofit's budget is in fundraising.
Yeah.
If you don't have to spend those monies, that's amazing. And you get all of these new people in exposure to that are already, warm leads and pre-vetted. So there's huge upside for the nonprofit for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you seen any models separate from yours that really interest you, where they've been collaborations that have really sort of come together from separate places?
Yeah, in India, actually, where we do our work, there is a lot of this hybrid model, in fact. And that's why we were, kind of seeing them lead that, because they do a lot of on the ground kind of humanitarian work across the spectrum, environmental and social. And then they were very much in the sustainability of starting these businesses to help fund those things so that they were no longer reliant on foreign funds, from the UK and the US and all of those things. And so them really pushing sustainability was a huge model for us, that we were saying, yes, we need to get on board. So we really mirrored what a lot of our partners in India are doing. And I've seen it in a lot of other places around the world. So I feel like the developing world is really kind of leading in that space. And so we have so much to learn from them. And then of course, they want to scale and be able to have, bigger marketplaces. So that's why we partner together. And we help provide a marketplace and conscious consumers who have maybe a little bit more disposable income than their current local markets would have, like in India. So yeah, tons of.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about that idea of scaling, how you grow this even bigger?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question, right, Sarah? I wish I had the answer to that.
Oh, come on.
So I don't, is the truth. I don't think anyone has it, but I think it's conferences like this where we can come together, where we can support one another, where we can be with our people, where we can really work together in terms of our community. I think those of us who are part of the community, the onus is on each other to help scale. So when you're able to spend your own dollars, be it professionally or personally, helping B Corp scale. And how do they scale? They need more customers, they need more whatever. So I think we need to sort of walk the talk and really support one another as a great example. And then, educate. We do, and Molly, does a great job and making sure we cross-pollinate a lot. She's our VP of marketing. And so we are not about just growing Sudara as a brand. We are really about growing the B Corp movement. And so a lot of what we talk about isn't just about our own stuff. It's about, if we're going to do a gift guide, it's not just like, oh, Sudara products are the best gifts ever for the holidays, which we believe they're awesome. We will usually say, and here are 8 other amazing brands you should know about. Right. And so I think using our platform to bring others along, to bring others up, there are some very large B Corps here. I think there's an onus and a responsibility for those really large, multinational B Corps to be bringing up some of the smaller SMEs and using their stage and platform to do that. So I think we can help each other scale in probably more interesting and innovative ways than we currently are. Some of it's happening. It needs to happen to a greater degree.
I think that's interesting, because obviously looking at community is a big part of what B Corps are looking at and are sort of being measured by. What is the benefit of having that as sort of one key nonprofit that a company's looking at, as opposed to saying, I can do this part and this part and this part, and sort of really spread the love and spread the joy? Do you think there's more impact by having one distinct nonprofit partner?
I do. And I don't know that I'm married to like one, but I think a small handful, if you're going to go, because I think Americans, part of our culture, which, I don't want to get off on a tangent or a soapbox, but that's rooted in like white supremacy, and all the like bigger is better and growth at any cost. And, all of those sort of underpinnings of being in a white supremacist culture that we're obviously trying to dismantle and reimagine. Is this, more is better, vanity metrics. We love saying we donate to 100 different nonprofits. Nobody wants to say just one. We let like somehow that's better, and the optics of it and whatever. And there's this like romantic view and notion that a lot of times, honestly, is, kind of bullshit in my opinion, that you're not actually measuring your impact when you do that, right? So like sprinkling crumbs all around, is that really helping anyone, versus picking one or a few and going really deep and measuring your impact together and really owning it? I just feel like, we can liken it to any relationships, right? Can you really have 100 best friends? Or do you have like a few that you can actually nurture and be involved with? It's like a very similar concept.
I'd love to hear in the chat if anyone has any examples that they've gone through, that they've sort of seen, or you can raise your hand and let us know, or let us know if you have any questions for Shannon or Molly. My dad always used to say, if you say that you have more best friends than fingers on one hand, you're kidding yourself. That's what that makes me think when you think about 100 best friends. I don't think that the depth there really kind of is very interesting, for sure. So you've been on this journey for 16 years now. Tell me a little bit about how that's grown and changed for you over that time. I don't know if Molly has a slide to illustrate some of that, or
I'm not sure. And if she does, she can pull it up kind of while I'm chatting. But, we've had a lot of learnings, trial by fire, failures for sure. I think as human beings, we can all attest to the fact that we learn a lot more sometimes through our failures and being burned and being naive and, just screwing up in general. So there's been so many learnings. One of the really cool learnings I've had in the last couple of years, and certainly during COVID, is that kind of business growth, and just in terms of numbers and revenue growth, doesn't always translate to impact growth. And again, sort of like when we're looking at white supremacy culture and like what we measure and being like, metrics and blah, which is important. I'm minimizing, like we want to do things in like a methodical way. We want to be efficient, but sometimes efficiency can get in the way of progress, in my opinion. And because we're not robots. And so we use a lot of these terms, these, urgency, efficient, scale, all of these terms that like somehow that is better, and that's the goal. And I don't think it is. And I think if we really are going to dismantle white supremacy and that culture and the underpinnings of it, if we really are as a community going to do things differently, we have to stop using those terms and act like somehow that's better or superior. And some of that is going, I think, a little bit more to the heart, right? And I don't say throw out the head. I mean, I think intellect's important, but we've been like the scales, I think, are really out of whack. And so we have to look at, I think, our outcomes more and say, okay, what are we really trying to do? Because a mission-based organization, our mission is aligned with the UN SDGs, specifically around decent work, economic growth, and gender equity and equality, those specific three. And how are we measuring against that? Not how much revenue growth have we had as a percentage year over year. I can have a 3x revenue growth, but if I'm not measuring against what I say I am as a B Corp, am I really succeeding? I would have to say no. So one of the learnings that I've had is sometimes we've had to Oh, and Molly's pulling up. This is our benefit report, because as you know, a certified B Corp, we all have a responsibility to put out an annual impact report. And so one of the things that's really important is we measure our work and our progress on the women, which you can see here, a picture of real women. That's not a stock photo that we serve. And what do they have to say? How are they measuring our success? You know, and that's a different than number of sales and numbers on a spreadsheet. And so what has been sort of an aha moment, and as a team has been really exciting, is that even though, you know, during COVID, our supply chain broke, this, that, and the other, our numbers in terms of revenue have been smaller than they have in previous years. And yet our impact has continued to grow. So the actual number of women we're serving, and we're having to do it different ways. We're having to be more collaborative and scrappy and smarter with our partners in India, but that's what's important to us. I don't care if I did $1 million less in revenue this year over last year, if I've actually helped more women and achieved my mission in a greater way. That's what I care about.
And that's amazing, obviously, fantastic. I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second and say that there are certainly businesses out there for whom they want to do this wonderful community work. They want to make an impact. That's what we're talking about with all these B Corps who are here. But what if they're saying, but I really need to make more money. I really need to bring in more revenue. How have you built the business side, the pajama side of what you're doing to sort of fill that and to grow that part of the business?
Yeah, and I don't think that that's a devil's advocate question necessarily. I think it's a good, relevant question that isn't like either or it's not the opposite of what I'm saying, right? It is yes and, right? And that is an important statement. I would just challenge the person making that statement, which is often myself. I mean, Molly can attest to the fact that I'm like, hey, these are our sales goals. These are our projections. We need to meet them. I'm not like, oh, it's cool. Nobody needs to meet our sales goals. It's fine. You know, no CEO on the planet has ever muttered those words. But at the same time, it really is secondary to our mission. And so as a mission-based organization, as a B Corp, if we're saying we want social and environmental change to happen, we don't want to work within the same context of a capitalistic structure that is exploitative, extractive, all of these things. So if we're saying that, we can't operate the way that got us there, right? Those same questions that have created the problems are not going to provide the solutions. It doesn't make any logical sense. And so we have to say, yes, we need to make money. And why do we need to make money? Okay, yes, we need to pay a living wage for our people. Check. We need to, you know, do these business things. We need to, okay, check, check, check. Great. But if we just make more money, does that mean our impact is going to be? Is that a cause and effect correlation? In some businesses, it might be, but just to have a false assumption that in every business, that's true without pushing on that, without poking holes, without doing your homework, I think that's naive and really lazy. If I'm honest, that's a lazy way to look at things.
If you want to make that step as a business, how do you approach a nonprofit or figure out really even where to start? If you don't want to kind of start your own and build your own nonprofit, maybe you don't have the capacity or the time to, or the resources to, or whatever, and you want to approach a nonprofit that already exists, what do you go to them with? What do you say? How do you?
Oh my gosh, I think that's like, you know, a nonprofit would jump at the chance to be aligned to the right business partnership for all the reasons that I said before. Like if you're, you know, giving them and taking a huge burden either off of their plate or helping them in a way, like for us, if a business is using their audience as a warm donor lead, like that's amazing to a nonprofit, right? So I don't think it's a hard sell as long as they know that you're genuine, because of course, usually nonprofits are under-resourced as a general statement. Many good ones aren't, but they're usually overworked, under-resourced, you know, all of the things. And so for someone to come and act like, oh, this is my, you know, Prince Charming moment, my knight in shining armor, they're like, yeah, whatever. I think you're just going to create more work for us. So I think that's
what I was thinking about. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
So
that I think perception coming in.
Right. So for the business, just like in anything else, as we're doing kind of like good Jedi work within our organizations, like everything sort of takes, again, I'll go back to this without sounding like a broken record. You have to have the conviction and the political will first, period. You know, this can't just be some little, flippant add-on thing. It really has to be, what is the mission of our organization? Who are we? And so if that's crystal clear, awesome. And then who do we want to partner with that would align with that so that we can have this synergistic effect so that we could do more together than we could apart. You have to believe in the collaboration. That has to be authentic and genuine to who you are. Right.
And
So
what should the nonprofit be giving back to the business side? Aside from just the sort of the awareness that the business is doing these wonderful things and really supporting this nonprofit, what else is in it from the business side for this partnership?
I think a lot of what nonprofits in some part are so good at is kind of the measurement of the impact, right? I mean, at least they should be, because that's kind of, they need to report that to their donors. There's a fiduciary responsibility in the board, you know, there's all of those sort of things. And so a lot of times the nonprofit can create, or in partnership, like the impact report, like that we showed. Now, as a B Corp, we, at least here in a benefit corporation in the state of Oregon, we have to have a benefit governor as part of our organization. So working that benefit governor, working hand in hand with nonprofit leadership, can create impact reports that are synergistic and that both can use. So there's obviously, you know, if there's any lawyers in the room, we don't want to make them like cringe or get heartburn, because nonprofits can't like really give a lot of stuff to for-profit entities. Usually it can flow the other way easily, but they have to be really sure that they're not like giving their assets or things. But there are ways legally above board and everything like we do that the nonprofit and the B Corp can work hand in hand to create this synergistic impact report. Why? Because when they have a similar mission and they're helping one another, those are shared impact metrics. And it shows how when we work together, these are the outcomes we can see. And so I think that's really important as well.
I think it would be fantastic to have more opportunities to bring nonprofits and B Corps together for just brainstorming and just thinking through some of these and like meeting each other and spending a bit more time together. That I think would be super cool. Where do you hope Sudara is, both sides of it, in a few years from now? What's the dream?
The dream is always to help more women and children, for sure. And the reason that we, because we have such an outcome lens and a commitment to our mission that we started in India, it's because India has such a huge population and is estimated to have the largest amount of slaves in the world, both sex slaves and domestic, workers and bonded servants and all of that. And so I hope that we are part of a group. Obviously, we don't have any delusions of grandeur or any sort of savior complex, but we want to be part of the movement that's moving the needle on that issue, specifically in India, because if we have done that, we have made a worldwide impact just because the sheer numbers of people that reside there. And I hope that we're, being a leader in the B Corp movement so that people can look at our model, not as the model, but as a really good model to say, hey, Sudara has done it. They've learned a few things over the last 16 years. This is not their first rodeo, and that people could really learn from our mistakes and we could help maybe fast forward some of those new Gen Z entrepreneurs to say, hey, this is a really cool way to do it. You'll have your own trial and error and failures, but why not, start from this really good place and go from there. So if we can help be a model that fast tracks other businesses behind us, we can be part of this, huge tsunami wave that I think we're all hoping will take a bigger stage in the marketplace and in the business community. That the B Corp movement and conscious capitalism will no longer be, this cool side dish, but it will become the main dish.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Shannon Keith and Molly Bull. We so appreciate having you here today. You are very inspiring, that's for sure. I know that we have C Money, the DJ, back in the main room. I can see her on my other screen right now. So I think we're going to pop back there and enjoy the last little bit of the day. But I really appreciate the two of you spending time
Yeah,
with us
awesome.
today.
And I know we didn't get to, thanks for having us, Sarah. Thank
Yeah.
you everyone so much for being here. We really didn't get to like a Q&A like I was maybe hoping, but please, if you want to contact us, look us up on LinkedIn. You can always go info@sudara.org. Check us out, and we'd love to connect with you. We really have an intention in this coming year to be more deeply involved in the B Corp community. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone, so much.
Cheers.